everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm really excited to be hosting GMR's Games Time Talks today. My name is Ania Sponaski. I am VP of Partnership Innovation at GMR, and I'm joined by a trio of incredible people, and I'm so excited to have our conversation today. So first of all, we have Ania Johannes, a Paralympian for London 2012 with Team USA, and is now one of my colleagues at Porter Novelli, an account executive at Porter Novelli. Hi, Anna. We have Matt Lederer, who is Vice President of Branded Partnerships at Comcast. And then Clayton Frech. Clayton is the CEO and founder of Angel City Sports, and he is also the father of Team USA, first-time Team USA Paralympian, Ezra Frech. And I'm really excited that we're all here together to talk about the Paralympics. The Paralympics are one of the biggest sporting events in the world by athlete and country participation, by viewership. But the games and the movement keep having to fight for the same kind of spotlight awarded to all other major sports. By creating a bigger platform around the Paralympics, we can continue to raise important conversations and make progress towards a more inclusive society where everyone has equal opportunity to succeed. So let's dive in, shall we? If the Paralympics represent global human values and can reach significant audiences, what can brands do to properly leverage the opportunity?
The biggest thing is, talking about it, using disabled people or Paralympians within marketing, but I think it also goes to internally. Are you hiring people with disabilities? Are you accessible? Are you making webinars accessible? Just a lot of the small nitty-gritty things has to be embraced, because when you look at social justice or disability justice, it can seem like too much to tackle, but when you take it one piece at a time and work with other disabled people, I think that's what brands can really do to enter this spaces.
Yeah, there's a lot of things, in my opinion, that brands can do to properly leverage the Paralympics and Paralympic athletes. So first is, what the Paralympics represent. To take that light of what they represent and shine that internally within your company, I think is really crucial from a hiring standpoint. In our case, is a building product standpoint, making sure that all of our products are accessible. We're the first company, to offer sign language as a customer care option. And I really do believe, while there's not a direct line to it, but our involvement in the Olympic and Paralympic space has pushed us internally to those types of opportunities. Then it becomes easier and more legitimate when you start talking externally about what the Paralympics mean.
What I would say is start with a really easy thing, which is work with nonprofits in this space. The nonprofits in the adaptive and Paralympic sports world have really been left to shoulder all of the responsibility of growing the movement. There isn't access to these programs at schools and traditional sports programs. So the nonprofit sector has a huge burden to bear, and you can learn a lot just by being around these athletes and hearing. They'll tell you their story, and they won't tell it you with any sad music. And so I think that can inform a lot in terms of hiring practices and customer service, and really can ultimately sort of transform your business, make it a more inclusive and equitable organization.
What do you believe would signify that the Paralympics have reached the status of other major global sports?
The covering outside of the games. I think there's really only coverage around the games, and then in between the Winter and Summer Paralympics, there's not much coverage. Even this year with the trials, I think it was the first time they put Paralympic trials on national TV. And so, it's heartbreaking when your friends and teammates are competing, and then you're at a sports bar and they have reruns of football, college football from 1972, and you're like, who cares? There's live action happening right now. How are we not covering this? And it's one of those things where you're like, well, why are we not doing that? And I think that's what would signify is when not just the Paralympics are covered equally, because that's the main point, but being able to focus on Paralympic sport and invest in Paralympic athletes year round, not every quad, not every 2 years, but like throughout the year. I think that's what would signify.
For sure, it's media coverage. That's number one. Two, for me, would be just sort of the sponsorship opportunities that the athletes have. I will tell you from firsthand experience, it's pretty tough out there for Paralympic athletes to make ends meet. And so I think what Toyota's done this year to lean in to help the team is amazing. But we're going to need a lot more Toyotas to sort of level the playing field. And then the third one, which is a bigger challenge to all of us, which is how do we make the pipeline and the path to making a Paralympic team easier and more accessible to all? You really have to be well resourced to muscle an athlete all the way up to the Paralympics. So how do we create true equity and access throughout the sort of the pipeline to the games?
Matt, let's look ahead to LA28, knowing that Comcast is now a founding partner of the LA28 Games. What are your predictions for the biggest Paralympic headline beyond the sports competition?
I think what LA28 is trying to accomplish beyond just the activation of the events, the execution of the events, and obviously, of course, the success of Team USA, they have a goal of leaving 2028 and making an impact in making our world a much more inclusive, accessible, and better place than when they picked it up. So I actually look at the headlines around Paralympics maybe a little bit differently than what we'll see on the track, in the pool, et cetera. But I think that they have a unique situation where they can galvanize brands like us to make an impact in the disability and accessibility space beyond just that of sport.
At the end of the day, is the athlete journey easier? Is the journey of a person living with a disability easier? Is the journey of an adaptive sports organization easier? We'll all be able to answer those questions come 2029, 2030, and beyond. So that, to me, it's all about legacy. And I think if we're all rowing the same direction here, I think we can make this world a more inclusive place post 2028.
Anna, I'll give you the final word. What excites you most about the future of the Paralympic movement?
What excites me most, and this is probably going to sound bad, is you can't fall out of a basement, right? Like we've made progress, but you can't really fall backwards from where we are right now. We can only really go up from here. And you can feel it. I think, all of us who are connected to the disability space, there's a shift. There has been, especially in the past, 5 or 6 months, I would say, there's excitement. There's a renewed sense of advocacy and allyship within the disability community and understanding. It's becoming part of these mainstream conversations. I think as people understand disability and the Paralympics, there's just going to be so much more work done and more room for, to your point, Clayton, for nonprofits and for grassroots movements, and really just to keep growing and exploding this movement. So I think that's what I'm most excited for.
I'm excited for the next conversation we can all have together. You have been an amazing group today, so I really, really thank you. And thank you so much for being part of this. Really, really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. Great to see you guys.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.